are preparing. Okay. All right, everybody. I think that we are live on all platforms. Uh, Twitter, well, currently known as X, and Facebook and YouTube. My name is Jennifer West. I'm the executive and artistic director of Muse West Concerts, and I am also your host for today's episode of Take Note. We are really happy to be back in podcast land because it has been a hot minute since we've done one of these chats with our artists, and we are coming to you today from the beautiful and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish people. Our work here is centered around decolonizing how classical music is practiced and presented in Canada, and we're very happy to host today uh, from Montreal, Steve Cowan and Adam Cicchillitti. Welcome to our podcast. How are you today?
Doing
We're
great.
doing fantastic. We just had the first concert of our tour earlier this morning.
And
It's a good day.
It's a good day.
It's a good day. And will it be the similar program you're going to perform for us and the Vancouver Classical Guitar Society?
Same program.
Lovely. And we're really excited about that. We haven't had guitar concert probably since 2018, and to say that guitar is popular would be an understatement. So before we get into guitar within the setting of classical music, I want to do a lightning round of questions. You two are very, very close friends. So this is going to be like at weddings when people raise the shoe.
Oh, nice.
You can raise your hands. Who is more likely to be rushing to make the flight?
Steve.
Yeah. Well, I'm better now. I've learned. So I've adjusted my way, specifically with flights. But I mean, everything else in life, that would be me. Yeah.
And who is more likely to forget their concert shoes?
That would be Adam. Adam has forgotten his guitar, no less, for one of our
I've
concerts.
forgotten my guitar before. It's not even a lie. It's not even an exaggeration.
So shoes, between shoes and guitars, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. If you had to pick a favorite rock band from the 60s or 70s, it would be?
I mean, there's many, but I'm just like I'm on a King Crimson kick right now, and they're having this is what I grew up with, and a few of the members are having a reunion tour. My dad got me onto them, so I'm going to see the concert with my dad and my friends this fall. And yeah, so I'm just gonna go with King Crimson.
Amazing.
That's a hard one. I'm definitely. I mean, you asked for a rock band, but I think Bowie was rock in the '70s, so I'd go with Bowie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good, always a good choice.
Yeah.
I mean, the right answer was Rolling Stones, but that's okay.
To each their own.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite post-concert protein refill meal? What do you eat after a concert?
Beer.
Not well.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Anything. I don't even realize how famished I am until there's just food in front of me, and then I will honestly just eat absolutely anything. It's
Steve and I have a pretty established pre-concert meal, which is Vietnamese pho, or soup tonkinoise, as we say.
This actually started, I don't know if you remember this, Adam. I believe I turned us onto this, and it was because the first time I had this experience was in Vancouver when I played for Muse West. Alec took me out for, and I mean in Vancouver, at least in Canada, it was certainly the most delicious pho that I've had. So and it was just so good, and I felt so good during the concert. So me and Adam tried it, and we've been doing it for like the past 5 years. All started in Vancouver, yeah.
So what you're asking for is my recommendation for 4 p.m. Vietnamese soup before the concert.
Yes.
Actually, yes.
Yes. I thought that's what the meeting was for today, actually.
Well, let me take this opportunity, a non-sponsored opportunity, to recommend Taste of Vietnam on Burrard and Broadway.
Nice.
We'll be there, April 27.
Love it. Love it. We're going to jump into some more serious guitar questions because, what has been remarkable for me, I didn't know much about the guitar before I started working with Muse West concerts and listening to different music. I knew that I liked the sound of it. I knew that I liked the sound of singer-songwriters with a guitar, and I was discovering how much classical music is actually written for the guitar and how much has been rearranged. And so I want to ask, how does the guitar rather fit into the classical music quote unquote scene? What repertoire is available for it?
You want to take this one, Steve?
Whew, sure, yeah, okay.
It's a
So I
big
mean
question.
that's a big question. So I mean just to give a I'll try to give like a condensed version of I'm not the biggest guitar history expert, but like going back to the typical periods we see, a lot of Renaissance and Baroque music will guitarists will be playing lute music or music for other plucked string instruments. So like the precursors to guitar. And just funny side note is that a lot of electric guitarists and pop guitarists learn music from tab these days on the internet as opposed to standard notation. And this is actually just like this 500-year-old system because of all the open tunings these early strings used. Yeah, there was just tab. Tab is actually back then. So a lot of guitarists, if they want, can actually go and find some of these ancient tabs and play a lot of early music. Then there was many other instruments depending on which country you're going to, and a lot of Baroque music, other than lute music, had a lot of strumming as well. Fast forward to the 19th century, and you get the six-string guitar that we sort of play today. Obviously, this has had many evolutions. So around this time, we get composers who were influenced by Mozart and Beethoven, composers like this. So they're not really big known names outside of the guitar world, but you will hear a lot of the same stylistic traits in original music for the six-string guitar that we know today. Again, fast forward, this sort of carried through the Romantic era a bit. And then the 20th century is when a lot of big performers started getting more success. A lot of non-guitarist composers with big names, Defaya being the first one, started to write music for the instrument. So the past 100 years, there's a lot of really great repertoire originally written for the guitar by non-guitarist composers. Again, from a myriad of styles. So that's just like the nylon string traditional guitar. But again, because you know it as a singer-songwriter instrument and it has its foot in so many different cultures, a lot of guitarists really dip their toes into all these different things, and that affects their programming, their repertoire, their influences. And these days, it's not uncommon to see, classical players playing the traditional stuff, but also doing stuff on electric guitar, doing stuff in a more pop idiom. You really see that more and more these days of just this multi sort of cultural, multi-technical approach to guitar playing. So that's my condensed 500-year lesson on guitar repertoire. So yeah, stuff from everywhere. Again, I would say the styles, it's too hard to summarize outside of that. I hope that was clear.
I love it. So, what's piqued my interest is there music between like 1750 and 1820 originally written for the guitars that were in salons then? Do we have a lot of original compositions from back then?
Uh, so most of the original compositions for the guitar from that era would have been after 1806, between 1806 and 1820, because of Giuliani, who was an Italian guitarist, virtuoso that used to tour widely, especially in Europe. Um, Prior to that, the guitar was mostly used in rural settings and like for amateur music making. It was still used in the Viennese salon at that time, widely, but it was mostly for amateurs to make music. So it was very basic settings of guitar accompaniments with, like boom chop, or boom chop with, very, very basic guitar accompaniments. And then there was, of course, at that time, I'm talking about post 1806 in Biedermeier, Vienna, like some really great virtuosos of the guitar following Mauro Giuliani. So names like Napoleon Cost and Giulio Regondi, and some Italian and Spanish guitarists. There's Fernando Sor as well. They wrote lots of guitar music, but it was generally, um, though virtuosic, very very much written for their own performances. So they would write these large fantasies in the style of Schubert that we're very familiar with today, but really they were only played by those guitarists themselves. So uh, guitar didn't have the reputation that the piano or the voice or the violin would have had back at that time, and that's why Steve aptly brought up. In the 20th century, that was really our time to shine, our time to come out of like the rural settings and onto the concert stage, starting with the Faya, and then obviously the great Spanish guitarist Andres Segovia that exported the instrument internationally.
We're gonna travel to Spain in a little bit.
Yeah,
So, given the um, given the fact that before that time there were some original compositions, they were written for some learners of the instrument. Um, Guitar music is now quite prolific, and I know that for both of you, and I'll throw this question to Adam. I know that for both of you, commissioning new music is really important to your career and your artistic development. Adam, can you talk to us about the importance of commissioning?
I mean, I can't understate to the health and vibrancy of music and art in general, the act of working with living people to propagate and perpetuate what we do. Um, Commissioning is probably the most important thing that we can do in 2024 to keep classical music, or quote unquote classical music, or art music, or post classical, or whatever it is that you do, alive, because um, that collaborative process is just so fundamental to making music, especially in guitar specifically. Um, it's very important for us to obviously identify with the compositional approach that the composers work with, but also to be able to work with these composers that we're commissioning one on one, because oftentimes Steve and I, in particular as a duo, we like to work with non-guitarist composers as well. And for the people that are listening that aren't aware, it's quite difficult to write for the guitar in an idiomatic way if you're not a native player on the instrument. And so it really does help either to play a little bit of guitar yourself or to work with a guitarist that can help you flesh out your ideas. Um, so yeah, so basically the whole point of this is I think commissioning is extremely important. And we're really lucky in Canada to have such a great, assortment of grant agencies that can help us get uh, our work out there, and to help us get the money to be able to fund these projects, because of course our careers are difficult as performers, but I think it's even more difficult to have a career as a composer of classical, or quote unquote classical music, um, in 2024. So, we're really lucky in Canada, but I think still more can be done.
Thank you for that. And I definitely recognize that without proper funding from the Canada Council for the Arts, the Conseil des Lettres et des Arts du Québec, BC Arts Council, City of Vancouver Cultural Agency, um, and that is not sponsored. This is like a true remerciement. This is true
From the heart.
gratitude. This is from the heart,
Yeah,
because this relieves so much stress financially and just allows us to get into the creativity. So
exactly.
I really appreciate that. Steve, your program in BC, any living composers on this one for us?
Yes, one from Alberta, Christine Donkin. Actually, two from Alberta. Andrew Staniland is, well, he's currently living in St. John's. That's how I know him. But two works by them. Again, most of the program is new arrangements from early to mid 20th century. But again, we always at least make a portion of our program some living composers, because yeah, all the reasons Adam stated, and more. I mean, I think they actually work stylistically with
Yeah,
what else we're playing as well. But yeah, I mean, just to even add to why, what Adam was saying and why it's important. I mean, as much as I love the traditional repertoire, I mean, we're exploring a lot of it, a lot of pretty what would be called mainstream stuff. I just think if you only do that, like that music that we're loving, that older music, it was a reflection of that day, you know what I mean? So I think it's art's duty to reflect the what's happening artistically, what's happening socially in the world today, and working with living people is the only way to do that. It's also just genuinely what I like to listen to. So
same here.
yeah, great, yeah, great pieces by Christine Donkin and Andrew Staniland. Love them.
Christine
Yeah.
Donkin is an absolute favorite of my piano students.
Oh, she's
She's
great.
written a ton of pedagogical, well, piano music for early students, and she's well known and well liked in classical music circles, and so it's our duty. Like, we feel that we love the music that she writes. We commissioned this piece with Prairie Debut in 2019 or 20, I believe.
Cool.
And it's just a short 5-minute piece, but it really
Crowds love
captures.
it.
Crowds love it, and it really
Yeah.
captures a um, like a wide variety of moods within a short piece. And though the fact that, she's not a guitarist or has never played the guitar, you can tell that she really understands the instrument because she's really gotten to know it, and she's writing more and more for it. So she's becoming more familiar with it, and she takes the time to really understand the instrument to make it sound. So it makes it sound good on guitar. It's flattering. So we're excited to play
Awesome.
that one for sure.
That is awesome. So the next question is for Steve. Um, Before you discovered classical guitar, you were like in a punk and a rock band, and you're a pretty badass drummer,
He still is.
and you still are. So first of all, it's pretty cool. Um, I'm
Thanks.
starstruck actually, Steve, to have someone so talented in classical also be in a rock band. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Can
it
you
is
tell
pretty cool.
us can you tell us a bit more? How do those worlds intersect? Um, what's the hustle like in both worlds? Like, I know that the technique required to be an amazing rock musician is like superhuman powers.
Hmm.
So tell us more about rock music. We're here
Oh,
for it.
especially
Sure.
drums.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, yeah, it's hard to explain. Like when I was a teenager, I was like playing drums and electric guitar. I took drum lessons, but I self-taught myself electric guitar a little later. I was playing it all the time, but I never, because I didn't have like serious teachers or serious training in a classical idiom. I never knew the word like practice. I never played scales. I never consciously thought like I'm working now. Like it was just entirely play for me. And so through that, I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, but it worked in this rock idiom for me. And I eventually got to a point where I was playing pretty complicated stuff on both instruments. So even though I wasn't reading music and I wasn't, you know, uh, learning this stuff in like a go to your teacher every week sort of refine it kind of way, I was in my own autodidactic way sort of working, I think, in a similar way, refining the things. So it wasn't that different is what I'm getting at. But then when I got to university and took classical training and learned, well, that this style of music needed a different approach, and then I really benefit from that kind of approach. Yeah, that sort of changed my workflow and changed my musicality, changed my ideas. But all throughout that time, I kept playing in a rock band, and the more I got into classical music, the more influenced by classical music my rock band got. Like again, a lot of it was instrumental, and sometimes you could even just chamber music for electric guitar and drums. It's just in different instrumentation. But I was borrowing harmonies from classical pieces. I even arranged some Stravinsky to play with like a down-tuned guitar and a really doomy drum beat. So
Didn't
again,
you do a variation of a Mom Poo melody with Sergio
yeah,
at one
yeah,
point?
exactly. This kind of thing. So at this point, I don't really consider it. It's just the same thing for me. And I guess another interesting point that has come up recently is I started playing again with this sort of art punk band, I guess you could call it. Really talented young guy from Toronto who writes all the material, and yeah, three guys from Newfoundland who I've been playing with for a long time. And what's interesting is that you have some trained musicians in the group and some untrained musicians, but the untrained ones still have incredible ear, incredible chops. But you just have to communicate in a different way. They don't know what I mean when I say come in on the and of four, or that note is flat or whatever. You have to just sort of speak in like sounds in a way, and like work in a different way. So that's a kind of interesting fact, I think. Depending on your training and background, you have to find how to work with other people. But again, long story short, because I've been playing in bands and working and listening with other people, that also just affects chamber music and my passion for it and my ability to adapt in different settings, I think. So yeah, moral of the story is it's kind of the same thing in my view. One's just way louder.
I was gonna say, does it get pretty loud in there?
Yeah, and I mean, I was a bit stupid when I was younger, but I have to wear earplugs now. Like, it's quite loud. And I think that's kind of the turnoff for some people. They might write it off, especially if they're classical music fans. But if you find a way, wear earplugs to the show
Yep.
or find the right way to listen to it. Again, even though it's like this punk band, like there's a lot of just nuance and sort of intellectual stuff going on there musically. It's quite complicated. And like I said, I appreciate it the same way I appreciate classical music. So it's all one thing in my brain. Yeah.
Very cool. And whoever wants to take this question can. Can you tell our podcast listeners a bit about why the Spanish tradition is so prolific in the 20th century. What was happening in Spain? I'm actually curious about this. What happened in Spain? Why is Spain like this big place of creative explosion for the guitar?
Well, I think part of it would have to be the composers that were writing for the instrument at the beginning, like in the early 20th century. Steve mentioned De Falla before, but there was also Turina and guys like Torroba, who were writing for a Spanish art form called the zarzuela, which is like a small opera basically, and guitars were often used in that art form. So the guitar was just kind of prevalent in all walks of life. I mean, not just the concert stage, also in the caves in Granada, where flamenco is very much alive today, right? There's something about the guitar, obviously it's Spain, given that it's on the Iberian Peninsula and it's very close to Africa through Morocco, and the way the instrument traveled from India originally, what we think is coming from India, and traveled the north of Africa, it makes sense that because of the Moorish occupation of Spain for 800 years, there was communication going on between the north of Africa and Spain, and so precedents of or antecedents of the guitar would have been found there, and um, it was extremely popular during the empirical time of Spain, when Spain was the empire and it was conquering the world, and so we have Spanish spoken as one of the main languages across the world, and obviously South America, most countries there speak Spanish, and the guitar is the national instrument of most countries in South America as well. So it's just kind of always been there. So the tradition is so strong. So in the 20th century, when non-guitarist composers started writing for the instrument, I think it translated,
There
over, and
was
that's why it was so popular. Do you have
Yeah,
anything to add to
composers
that,
at this
Steve?
time. Well, just composers at that time. There was like sort of a rise of like nationalism in music, and because
Absolutely.
the guitar kind of symbolized, certain folk traditions, and even like I mentioned, the modern guitar that was built. I believe Torres was he
Yep.
Spanish, wasn't it?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So
The
the
six the
modern
six
guitar,
string.
again, the guitar was that we know today was conceived was comes from Spain.
Yep.
So yeah, when these composers were just trying to do this in a more sort of formal classical idiom, I guess.
I mean, they,
They,
they
they
did
they
they
chose they chose guitar as a vehicle in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did find, six-string guitars dating back to the late 18th century in Germany and such, but it really was, and obviously the rise of the first kind of like silver age of the guitar. The golden age, as we refer to as the time of Gaspar Sanz and the Spanish like Armada, the late 17th century, but that was mostly Baroque guitar, so a four-course instrument. But it was really in Vienna. It started in the 19th century, and then obviously because, like Steve was saying, um, the nationalistic enterprise of the Spaniards, um, the guitar was just so representative of Spanish culture, So and that, it was just a natural thing to export, I think.
That's wonderful. That actually really helps complete the circle, I think, to understand like why Spain? And it
Hmm.
didn't start when I thought it did. It started like long centuries before.
Yeah, think of Christopher Columbus, like way back.
Yeah, a long time ago. So here's a kind of a interesting question. Have either of you thought of learning the theorbo or the Baroque guitar?
I have. I mean, I was sharing some stuff with one of my classes the other day. One of them being a theorbo video, just to give them a taste of some of these other instruments. And again, it's just there's a couple of people on YouTube, and it's just so beautiful. And there's also another student at McGill who plays an arch lute right now, which is like a mini theorbo, which is cool, but not as cool because one of the cool things about a theorbo is that it's like 500 feet long. Um, but yes, it's it does. So for that reason, it doesn't seem that practical, and my apartment's not that big, so I don't know if it'd realistically happen. But I do love the music, and even though I haven't been bitten by the like period instrument bug yet, I still again am just having a lot of fun exploring the modern guitar. I do think there is a time in my life when yes, I will dip my toes into either the lute or theorbo world. I'm saving it for later.
The retirement project.
Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna have to cut off your nails. Well, actually, you know, that's the beauty of playing with fake nails, actually, is that
Exactly. Yeah.
we can just get rid of them anytime we want.
Actually, our podcast editor had a request. What's your nail care?
Oh, this is.
No, are you serious? You want to open that can of worms, eh?
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
here for it. We're here
well,
for it.
Or you're
this
here for
is the
it?
podcast just got a whole lot longer. You know. This is, do you want to go first, Adam, or will I go? I don't know. You go.
Well, I'll just talk very briefly. So I use these are fake plastic nails from well, I guess from your neighborhood drugstore. They're specifically for those that are interested. Um, from the Kiss brand by Broadway.
Oval tips,
I
not
mean,
the
you guys,
square tips.
not the
The
square
square.
tips. I use the oval
This.
tips. You guys got to know that. I use the oval tips. But I think what's more interesting is actually how what adhesive I use to keep the nails on. So I use a non-toxic tape adhesive, which is like a two-sided tape, which are imported especially from Italy, which seems to be the only place that they make them. It's essentially like 3M two-sided tape, but in the shape of a nail, and then you put the fake nail on top of it, and you file it down, and it's always consistent. I guess you know, I played on my real nails for so many years, and you know, I was able to get a good tone, but it was very variable from day to day. And some days it was working, some days it wasn't. A lot of it would have to do with genetics, a lot would have to be with diet. So, you know, some people just have naturally bad nails. And so, um, once I really started playing with Steve, he was the one that introduced me to the world of the fake nail, and I have never
I've
gone back since.
I've been on the fakes for a long time.
Steve is a seasoned veteran.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and mine are pretty much the same. I just glue them on, which is just less good for your nails. But yeah, there's a lot of shaping, and sandpaper is the key as well to make them very smooth. There's a specific shape.
Sandpaper.
Well, yeah, well, we have it on stage. You'll probably see us doing it on stage. Like honestly, you'll know a guitarist because you'll just see little. Let's see, I have just a pocket full of it right now. You know, this is just everywhere, and most guitarists are the same. It's honestly like a key part of the sound. They really need to be smooth,
So some
like
days
like perfectly smooth. Yeah,
yeah, they have to be perfectly smooth. It's like very, very important, Jennifer, okay?
yeah.
Um, but sometimes I'll get photos, like I'll be out teaching or something. I'll get a photo from my wife and she's just did the laundry and she's found like a bunch of pieces of sandpaper at the bottom of the washing machine because all my jean pockets had like 5 pieces of sandpaper in them. It's just,
See,
it happens.
Oh gosh, and here I thought my once a month gels were doing well.
Nice
uh,
nails.
Thank you. Shout out to Allure Nail Salon a block away.
Right on.
nice.
Not sponsored,
Not
Not
sponsored. Wow.
sponsored.
but I would happily. Well, this is very, very good wisdom for all the young guitarists out there wondering what to do with these nails.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And not to be afraid to experiment with fake nails because I remember thinking, oh well, I shouldn't do that because I'm worried about ruining my nails. But the thing is that well, I found a non-toxic alternative to be able to stick the nails on and keep them on. Um, but also like until you actually try it, you know, don't knock it or don't knock it. That's not how the saying goes. Don't knock it till you try it.
Too much French. I'm flipping
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
This
love
is
it
it.
all say. Um, so last question kind of revolves around chamber music, and the first question I'm going to throw out to Steve, which is arranging miroir and all of these beautiful French Impressionist pieces that I will say they do belong to us pianists, but we'll lend them to you
Thank you.
on a brief loan period. Um,
Thank you.
so, Steve, can you tell us about arranging? And then we'll finish our podcast today with I want to know about Adam, your project with our mutual friend Laura on flute. Guitar and flute sounds like a great combination, actually, just like the decibels that each create. I think it's like a really good match. So we'll start with Steve, tell us about arranging, and we'll finish with Adam telling us about flute and guitar music.
Sure. So I'll give a brief introduction to this, but and I do some arranging, plenty. But I would say Adam is the arranging expert. So maybe when I pass it to him, he can add a couple of things. So I think what we've said before when we've been asked this question is like a key thing is to choose the right kind of pieces. So we'll kind of hear piano pieces and hear textures and know based on how dense it is or how fast it is or what register it's in if it will actually translate to the guitar, because we don't want to have to just completely reimagine things. We want something to work mostly as it's written, with a few little exceptions when necessary. So yeah, we've chosen pieces that are often, as far as pianists are concerned, maybe the hands are closer together and maybe they're not super difficult, but this translate, a medium difficulty piano piece translates to very difficult on the guitars. So sometimes, again, depending on the piece, it could be as simple as giving one hand to one guitarist and the other hand to the other guitarist. Sometimes, again, you need to make some modulations because our available keys really revolve around our open strings. So flat keys, for example, are just they just don't sound as good and they're much more difficult. So those are sort of little things. Um, Outside of that, again, it's we try not to choose rep that forces us to omit too much in terms of like harmony that needs to be there. Most of the changes I would say we make are in terms of register. We will move something up an octave if we have to, or move something down an octave. The other thing we get, what we think it adds, and this is what the feedback we've gotten is that yes, this repertoire is amazing on piano, and that's why we fell in love with it. And we don't want to compete with those versions, but things like the different sort of tone colors we can get on the guitar, things like vibrato to make melodies sort of sing in that kind of way, and also having two of us play repetitive pieces will often, if one person's on melody and accompaniment, on the repeat we'll switch. So because there's two of us playing these kind of pieces, it adds like again a lot of variety. So that is a big part of the arranging too, is thinking about who will play what. And there's not really a guitar one and a guitar two. We're constantly changing
Hmm.
who's in the foreground and who's in the background. And again, that keeps it interesting for us and for the audience, and I think offers a new perspective to the pieces. Adam might have things to add, but
To be honest, that was super succinct and concise. I think no, you covered basically everything that I would have said.
okay, thanks.
No, and he, he threw the ball to me, but Steve does a ton of arranging for us too. Like we played an entire set of 8 piano miniatures by Germaine Taillefer in the concert earlier today, and they were all done by Steve. And the engraving is brilliant, and the arrangement is basically perfect. I think after the concert, we decided maybe there's one passage in one of the pieces that we are is a little bit too dense in one of the guitars, given the tempo. And I think that's one of the main things I would say I would add to what Steve said is that tempo and speed of the piece is really important. Um,
We
what
can't shred as
may
easily as you. Yeah.
mechanically on a piano, what can work doesn't necessarily translate to the guitar in terms of speed. Because of the way the piano was designed, and it's linear. When you have to do it with strings, your fingers often trip over each other. I guess is the best way to explain it to somebody who doesn't play guitar. It's very easy for the fingers to it's limited by what our fingers can actually do on the strings. And given that it's two hands trying to create one gesture rather than having two independent hands. So speed is always an issue, and so we have to make sure that when we're playing fast things that it's doable, it's playable. The individual parts are able to sing, and it's not too dense for one thing. Um, so sometimes challenges could also be, like Steve was saying, what notes to omit, basically what notes to not play. Um, we generally try to keep it as light as possible because we want to keep the character the same and we want to preserve the essence of the piece when we translate it. And to answer your question, by the way, first of all, you don't own any of this rep, just because you're a pianist. I can see by your
Oh, I
shocked
don't
face that you don't
know.
you don't agree. You think these are fighting words, but Maurice Ravel is in the public domain, so he is as much my like grandfather as he is your grandfather. And I think that his music is just so beautiful on guitar, lyricism and intimacy and all these things that are so fundamental to impressionist music. It just works really well on the guitar. It's an intimate instrument, and Stephen mentioned the vibrato thing. I think that's actually kind of understated a little bit. Vibrato
Mhm.
cannot be done on the piano, and um, when we play this program that we're presenting in Vancouver and in BC is literally called lyrique. It's a lyrical program, and I think lyricism uh, is associated with the voice, the human voice, and vibrato is a string instrument or other instrument technique that emulates the voice, so it makes it more singable, more lyrique. So I think we're adding a new dimension to this music. It doesn't take away from the fact that yes, we know everybody knows Jennifer. The piano has the best repertoire. We know. But at the same time, other people are allowed to play it too. Okay.
And you know what? Most pianists play it too fast, anyways.
There you go.
Exactly.
So, and just to answer the point that you made about chamber music with Lyra, she is one of my best friends. She's actually having a baby. She might even be having it right now as we speak. Who knows? She's literally like very, very pregnant. And so it's been a real pleasure to build this program with her. We do a lot of commissioning ourselves. We just got a new Canada Council grant to commission a composer named Puya Hamidi. I don't know if you know him, but he's part of the Ladom Ensemble, which is a Toronto-based quartet. And we just premiered this piece by a fellow composer from Moncton named Jason Noble. That was actually written or arranged for the guitar for Steve and his flute partner Hannah. So you said that the flute and the guitar are they sound like a great configuration. I mean, it's probably one of the guitarist's best partner instruments because there's nothing that, in terms of the frequencies in the sound, there's nothing really that overlaps too much. So we really cut through each other very well. The guitar can really support the flute with all the harmony and harmonization that we can do under the instrument, and the clear sound of the flute can really like just add a dimension to it, So guitar does really well in duos, whether it's with another guitar like in my duo with Steve, or with the voice, or with the flute. With melodic instruments, we do tend to do well. Guitar and euphonium, it's a thing, you know. The only instrument that we don't really do as much collaborating with is the piano, because pianos are so loud.
Yes, we're too loud.
If you amplify though, there are a few jams. I mean, Adam recently played with piano. There are some good original pieces, not a lot, but a few really good ones, and some quite good arrangements for guitar and piano as well.
Oh, guitar and piano is an amazing configuration. You really need to be amplified for the majority of settings,
For sure.
Yeah.
The balance would be tricky.
It is tricky.
I think that my favorite combination is romantic guitar and Schubert songs.
Right on.
It's pretty hard to beat. Yeah.
It's hard to beat. And this is coming from a pianist and singer who loves the original setting, but when I heard it with the guitar, I was like, okay, well, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
is so wonderful to speak with Steve and Adam, who will be joining us in Vancouver. You can find them at Taste of Vietnam at 4 p.m. on Saturday.
She's not wrong.
And you can find tickets at Eventbrite or musewest.org, or through the Vancouver Classical Guitar Society. You can find recordings of Adam and Steve on Analecta and Atma. Please buy the physical album, friends. We're getting a big nod from our podcast editor here, who loves real physical albums and vinyl and CDs. So
nice.
Nothing can replace that.
Nothing can replace it. So we want to say thank you. Merci d'être venu sur notre podcast aujourd'hui. And we will see you in 2 weeks. And have a safe flight to BC.
Thank you so much. We can't wait.
Merci, thank you, Jennifer.
Au revoir.
Bye.
Bye.